The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with it's Dom and Andrew today.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew. So lovely to see you.
Oh, it's lovely to see you too, Dommy. I don't often get to drop in on the Chaser Report, but I gather that your Doddery leader, Charles Firth, has doddered off. I mean, you know, we're surrounded by Doddery leaders at the moment, aren't we? I gather poor old Charles has doddered off somewhere.
The only man who takes more time getting to the point than Joe Biden, Charles Firth, has gone off to do all this stuff. He's going to be only dropping in and out for the next few months. So we had promised the people a Taylor Hansen experience, and I'm sure a lot of people will be logging on to hear that. But unfortunately, Chris is terrible with technology.
Yeah, so speaking of Dodderers.
Just go into the podcast studio and you just hit record on the app, and it was far beyond him.
Too hard.
So I'm back, despite being in New Zealand at the moment, and you're in Melbourne. So we're through the magic of technology. We're in the same chat room to do this.
Look, we're nice. Very global, aren't we? And it's nice to be here in between the pauses in Charles's sentences.
So we'll get onto the debate in a moment and just catch up on the reaction to what we described in the last episode as Biden quiet quitting, perhaps involuntarily. Perhaps his sort of cerebral assets are just retiring without his agreement. And then you've done a bit of research, which I'm looking forward to.
Oh, absolutely, Dommy. I'm going to introduce us to history's great Dodderers because I figure this is not a new phenomenon, Dommy. You know, I don't think we need to be worried or panicked. And I'm going to show some nice examples of other Dodderers to reassure us that everything's fine.
And it all begins after this. All right, so it'd be fair to say that there's been a massive freak out from the Democrats. So really anyone who wants to see Donald Trump stopped. A lot of his closest friends, political allies, the New York Times, podcast hosts the world over, you know, the Rest is Politics hosts, all four of them, the US and the UK edition, they've all come out and said Biden's got to step down. He's got to get out of there. Who's going to tell him? And so essentially, I think of the Atlantic, you know, the Atlantic magazine in the US, they had 6 separate op-eds the following day, all of which said Biden step down.
6. So any in favour? Any sort of pro-Biden ones?
Well, Barack Obama got out and said, look, you can have a bad debate. He had a bad debate when he was going to get re-elected. But I mean, not like this. He didn't end up saying, you know, we I think, what did you say? We hit Medicare or we hurt Medicare or something like that.
Yeah, it's a bit like sort of, you know, the Germans after World War II saying something like, look, you know, sometimes you have a bad war, but, you know, it's not all over. You know.
And this is the thing. I mean, I'm quite proud of our last episode because we made a very big call, Andrew. We stuffed up the timing of our recording sessions. So we started at 11 a.m. on Friday because we had a lovely lunch. We had a Chaser reunion, which was very nice to sit down with you and the others. But
great lunch.
We'd booked in our conversation, Charles and me, just as the debate was starting. And so I listened to about 3 or 4 minutes on the way in to meet him. And I couldn't believe it. Biden sounded so out of it. He was pausing halfway through a sentence. He was sub-Firthian in terms of his incoherence.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, I tuned in likewise, Dommy, at some point for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I heard nothing because it was actually a 4-minute pause, you know, in the middle of one of Biden's sentences. Yeah. I thought the radio had died.
That's right.
It was the US president.
Just completely having a brain shutdown. So we just called it. We just said, look, it's over. I've heard enough. I sent Chaz a text about 4 minutes into the debate saying Biden's lost. He can't speak. And Charles didn't watch any of it. Was still confident in saying that Biden was done and that Donald Trump was going to be the next president. So nothing has happened to dissuade us. But Andrew, they've been gathering. The Bidens have been gathering at Camp David, the whole extended family, to try and work out, should he drop out? What's he going to do? What's the plan here? And my concern is that even if he wanted to drop out, I don't know that his brain would actually successfully formulate the sentence to say it.
to declare that I quit. Yes, he'd probably get as far as, now I have something that I'd like to say. What was it? Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, we've got to get the sentence out of him. Does he have an enduring power of attorney? I mean, can somebody else quit on his behalf?
Yeah. I'm sure Hillary Clinton would be very happy to jump in. It's a good question because everyone's saying, look, it's all down to Jill. Jill Biden, who's his second wife, of course, after the very sad death of his first wife in that car crash. Jill is the only person he really listens to. So if Jill says, honey, you got to stop, then he'll give up. But unfortunately, she's going double down, you're amazing. And so I don't know how you convince Jill Biden that Joe's, you know, many beers short of a six-pack at this point? It's a tough question.
Oh, well, we just need to talk to her over the fence, don't we, or something? You know, I mean, or we have to hope, I think, that her friends might sit her down. I mean, if it's really up to Jill, why didn't Jill do that? I mean, if it's all up to Jill, I'm disappointed Jill didn't do that.
I mean, this is the solution, isn't it? To elect Jill.
I feel yes, she's the one who can make the decision.
She'd be great, and certainly if she's able to convince Joe Biden of whatever, that's more convincing than Joe Biden's going to be doing. I mean, he was asleep. I watched more of it since talking to Charles. It's extraordinarily bad. I don't see how he can possibly go on. But the thing I love about this is that Donald Trump is very upset because Donald Trump is feeling that he doesn't get any credit. Everyone's talking about how terrible Biden was. And so Trump's made up all these fantastic lies about how all the moderators were saying it was the most tremendous debate performance by anybody in the history of debates. Like apparently, Jake Tapper and the other CNN anchors were just grabbing him on the way, going, Donald, your most amazing performance ever. And so he can't allow, even though he's basically won the election at this point, his ego will not let him win by default because Biden's basically doddering and on the verge of death. He's got to have crushed him with the best debating performance of all time. Whereas in fact, he wasn't great. He was full of shit the whole time.
He's sort of suffering really from having done a Bradbury.
Yes,
hasn't he?
He has.
Donald Trump. That's exactly what he's done, really. And it's the same sort of sad thing that poor old Stephen Bradbury faced, which was that he was actually a terrific skater who went through a lot of trouble and did very, very well to win that gold medal. And the other three skaters were Joe Biden. And they just,
They collapsed in a heap of malapropism. No, it's true. And look, I know you got to interview Stephen Bradbury, or certainly Chris did for your show, Australian Epic. I must say, I think turning this debate into a musical would potentially be beyond even you and Chris's talent.
Oh, look, it would be tricky because, what part would you write for Joe Biden to sing? I mean, you'd have to build in a lot of long pauses.
Yes.
You couldn't give him many lyrics. You couldn't let him finish an actual line of the song because he only ever got halfway through a sentence. You'd have to sort of have two different slow types because they're both very slow old men, aren't they? I mean, that's the interesting thing. We've all been looking at Trump this whole time, how ancient he is and how unhealthy, and we never thought he'd really be outdone in that field.
Yes, it's true. I mean, we are giving Donald Trump a lot of credit for being less unhealthy than Joe Biden, but there's every possibility that his heart, his poor suffering, Big Macified heart, gives out between now and... I mean, this could be a contest between two completely different candidates by the end, by the time we get to November. I wouldn't bet money on either of them surviving.
No, well, you wouldn't have even years ago. But you know what, Dommy? This is not a new phenomenon. I mean, we're sitting here worrying about these ancient leaders, but I have done a bit of research on this, as I like to do sometimes when I drop into the Chaser Report.
I'm so impressed you've actually brought some facts rather than just unjustified theories, a la Charles.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm still happy to shout like an ignorant old man in the same way that Charles does, but I've got a couple of vaguely researched tidbits here.
Okay, I'm so interested to find out. So you're saying Joe Biden is not the first doddery old fool to hang around in political office?
Yeah, look, we've often had doddery leaders, and it has been noted in the wake of the debate. Of course, Reagan was happily running the world with Alzheimer's, and JFK had a thing called Addison's disease. Mitterrand had cancer, and Roosevelt had polio. So being terribly infirm is actually a prerequisite for a world leader. It's a good thing. I mean, it's kind of something you need for the job. So, how about you and I, Dommy, have a dive into history's great dodderers?
Feel free to just pause randomly and contradict yourself at any point during the conversation as a tribute to those who've gone before.
Yeah, I might be doing. Look, it's a glass house here because I'll probably sound pretty doddery myself. I mean, you and I are not getting any younger either, are we? We'll be fit for the presidency soon. A bit of a trigger warning here. Ageism is going to take place. That's not two words, by the way, but you don't have to look out for ageism. I'm talking about ageism. It's not that type of trigger. Okay. Now, we need a word for... Well, I was thinking we actually need an ocracy, don't we? An ocracy for rule by extremely old and doddery people.
Well, there is a word for that.
Well, what's the real word?
The rule of the aged is a gerontocracy.
It's a gerontocracy, but that's not good enough.
But the thing is that that's what America is, right? You've got people have been making the point. Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi are older, both of them, than Trump and Biden. 82, I think, McConnell, and 84 for Pelosi. And McConnell's been having these long periods where he just freezes on camera, like Tony Abbott when confronted with the Chaser. But no, we need to, and a word that builds in the a dodderocracy.
A dodderocracy? It's good. Yes, or I was thinking an incontinocracy. That could be a nice one.
Adult napocracy. Dependocracy.
Dependocracy. A geezerocracy. But look, let's look at some other examples. And so that we know we're not alone here. I'm going to sort of cast the net around the world. In the state of Tamil Nadu in India, the chief minister retired at 87. Italian President Giorgio Napolitano retired at the sprightly age of 89.
Leaving a fantastic pizza sauce behind him.
Wonderful pizzas. Yes. In the US, though, there's a guy called Strom Thurmond who was governor of South Carolina.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember Strom?
That's a wonderful name. Strom.
Isn't that an interesting name? And his nickname was Fritzy.
Okay.
Fritzy. I don't know why. Perhaps because he was frequently on the fritz from being so ancient.
Well, maybe he was so old that actually he dated back before World War One, and having a German association was actually seen as a good thing back then.
I tell you what, he did date from pre-World War One.
Oh, really?
Back in 2003, Strom died in office at the age of 100. He was turning up to work diligently every day. I don't know if he was still using the office gym. But imagine working and your boss is 100. I mean, what would you, every afternoon you'd be, saying to your co-workers, should we check in on him just to see if he's still with us? I mean,
you'd get a lot of breaks. You can't tell me he wasn't having little nana naps all afternoon. Yes. I think it'd be an easy job.
And imagine how surprising when he turned up every day.
Yes,
oh my God, he's walked in.
You've beaten the odds again, Strom. Well done.
What? It's Thursday. You've made it. Unbelievable. Well, now when Strom finally died in 2003, eventually he got there, a well-known US politician delivered the eulogy. Have a listen and tell me who you think it was.
Nancy, Strom, Julian Paul, James Strom Thurman. Fritzy was one complex guy.
It's a bit hard to hear down the line from New Zealand, but I feel like I heard more pauses than I heard talk. So I'm thinking it might have been Joseph Robinette Biden.
Oh, very good, Dommy. Yes. The pausey Biden that was, who was back then a strapping young boy of merely 61. Yeah.
Wow.
That was him delivering the eulogy.
Actually, so he knew the oldest guy ever. And this is what's,
now
done
he
him head
is.
in.
By
the standards of Strom Thurmond, Biden's a spring chicken. Biden's a butter. He's middle-aged.
Absolutely. I mean, look, and somebody should be delivering Joe Biden's eulogy now. I mean,
I think politically speaking, any newspaper in the United States has printed it in today's paper, to be honest.
The Chaser Report. Less news, more often.
All right, but for true dodderiness, Dommy, we really need to turn to the former Soviet Union. Now, they had a cracking parade of shaky, ailing fogies that would even make Bob Katter look like a young liberal by comparison. And Brezhnev is a good one. Let's start with Brezhnev. He was in his 70s, and he was running the Soviet Union after having had a stroke.
Wow.
Here is Brezhnev, and he's giving a televised speech. Now consider that the purpose of this speech, it was meant to sort of enthuse and motivate young Soviets about the wonders of their country.
К сожалению, сегодня на земле еще во многих местах гремят выстрелы, льется кровь, гибнут не только взрослые, но и дети. Много еще детей умирает от голода.
There he is, in his 70s, Brezhnev. Now, before people perform, Dommy, before they sort of go on stage, they often have a routine to kind of pep themselves up. Some do push-ups, of course, some people meditate. But in his last years, how do you think Brezhnev prepared for his televised speeches?
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, I've known a lot of lefties over the years, a lot of hardcore kind of socialist lefties, people like Charles in his youth. And I think the way they pump themselves up is by reading the minutes of the subcommittee on administrative trivial detail. Just get into the most unnecessary regulations. And I think that makes them not only pumped up, but erotically aroused, Andrew. Either that or it being the Soviet Union, Union, they just would have executed some intellectuals. I don't know which of the two, but somewhere between the
got
two.
him excited. He didn't sound to me like he'd come straight from anyone's execution except perhaps his own in that speech.
What was he saying there? I'm envisaging what he was saying was, in this socialist paradise, adult nappies are free for all. That's what I was hearing.
I think that's about it. Well, look, if anyone wants to run a Google Translate over that and let us know, please do at the Chaser Report's contact page. Look, I can tell you how he prepped, Dommy. He usually prepared for such speeches by taking a whole lot of sleeping pills and then having to be roused from his drug-induced slumber by Kremlin doctors.
This is what happened to Joe Biden. He's done the Brezhnev model. They said
pills.
he had a cold. I feel, because there's all these rumours about him, being jacked up for the State of the Union when he gave a really rousing address. Clearly, he's taken the wrong pills.
I think he's on the Brezhnevs.
He's on the Brezhnevs, absolutely.
Well, so what happened shortly after that? To no one's surprise, Brezhnev died, and he was succeeded by Yuri Andropov. Now, Dommy, how many months do you think Andropov lasted before he himself dropped off from kidney failure?
I feel like he was the Frank Forward of the Soviet Union. I think, 2 to 3 months. He's not remembered fondly by history. He's barely remembered at all.
Well, actually, he actually stretched it out for 15. He
Really?
managed 15 months. Yeah.
Did it feel like 15 months, or was it actually 15 months?
It did. I mean, his kidneys were failing the whole time. It felt like 35 million months for him, particularly. Now, after Andropov, they wheeled out poor old Chernenko, who was aged 72 and extremely unwell. Already from day one. Now, in 1985, the Russian telly put on a little TV show, and they showed Mr. Chernenko in his office receiving the results of the election. So, Dommy, of course, it's the Soviet Union. What percentage of the vote do you think Chernenko received?
Oh, it's got to be above 100. I'm thinking maybe 103, 104. Which is also how old he seemed when he addressed the nation.
Yeah, no. Well, look, even the Soviets weren't quite as outrageous, but it was 100. He did receive exactly 100, so that must have brought some cheer to the sick old man. That must have, to know that he was well liked.
Wouldn't Joe Biden love a ballot paper with only one option on it about now?
Yeah. And now on the TV show, of course, where they announced this, it was in Chernenko's office, but what was unusual about Chernenko's office when it was shown on the TV?
What I'm imagining, given the general theme of this, that may have been there, is a full oxygen tent. I'm imagining that by the standards of Soviet leaders, he had a drip in his arm and was barely alive. He was actually coming to the nation live from the casualty or the ICU.
Dommy, yes, you are correct.
Really?
Let's put in a ding. The office was actually Chernenko's hospital room in disguise.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe it. There you go. Again, a really good option for Biden going forward, I think.
Well, maybe that was what it wouldn't surprise me if the debate hadn't actually been held in a disguised aged care facility.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there's all this concern about deep fakes at this election and people coming up with a sort of AI-generated Joe Biden giving misinformation. But I think that could be a definite improvement. I think you should wheel out the AI Biden.
Yes, it'd be a vast improvement. Or any sort of generated
or any
Biden.
Sort of intelligence, artificial or otherwise, would be considerably better. Well, there you go. By the standards of an ancient Russian broadcasting from within his disguised hospital room, actually, no, I think Joe Biden still needs to go. I think he's still, even compared to Leonid Brezhnev, I think Biden was more doddery. Andrew, it's been enormously nice having someone who's actually done some research. It's not necessary next time. Just next time you come back, feel free to just very confidently make predictions about the future without any research or basis. But thank you for bringing some facts in. I think should Joe Biden get to hear this episode, he'll actually feel quite heartened that by Soviet standards, he's in the prime of his life.
The Chaser Report. Good by Soviet standards.
Our gear is from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network. And look, I or Andrew or Chris or someone will join you tomorrow on the feed. Catch you then.
See you.